I'm going to call the Board of Education meeting for Tuesday, April 17th, our business meeting to order, and we will start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mr. Barbas. I have some tragic news, actually some unfortunate news I wanted to share with everyone. We lost one of our own, one of our students, a 2014 graduate of Norwalk High School, passed away on March 12th. His name is Douglas Knowles. Loved by his mom, his dad, his sister Carolyn, his brother Tommy, his friends. He was active in sports, great sense of humor, had a true zest for life, and it's just a tragic moment for all of us here. So I'd like for us to have a moment of silence at this time.
This is a demonstration of Wirecast.
Thank you, Ms. Keys.
Thank you.
We will start off our meeting, or move on to public comments. Mr. Meek.
Thank you, Chairman. Tonight's public comments, we have 4 speakers. The first is Eric Niederer. Please step up to the podium, state your name, address for the record, and you have 3 minutes.
Yeah, Eric Niederer, 36 Pedham Road. I'm also splitting my time with Margaret Kozlark.
57 Tierney Street.
We've been asked here to speak on behalf of NEC, also known as NECC, with regards to a candidate that's been put forth. We are members of SPED Partners, and we're speaking here today as parents within the SPED community and also with our connection to NEC. The concerns, I can tell you, I just came back from vacation, and I came back to a firestorm. And the firestorm is that there was a candidate that was discovered on this Board of Education agenda, and many of the parents were not aware of it, and it created some concerns. You know, one thing that we've worked over the last year is to try and be collaborative and have a collaborative relationship with the district, and I think it's very important that the collaboration is a two-way street with regards to communication, hearing us, and also us hearing the district and working together. What you may or may not know is about a year ago, when we were looking for the new chief of specialized learning, we were advised that we would be told, and actually it was Margaret and I, that we would be confided in a specific candidate before there was any decision made. We actually learned of the candidate after a decision was made, and this kind of harked back to what occurred about a year ago, which recently happened, in that a candidate was offered. My understanding in speaking with several of the prominent NEC representatives, that they were unaware of that. So we're here not to talk about this candidate. I haven't seen a resume. I don't know any information about this candidate. I have heard some good things, so I don't want you to think it's about the candidate specifically. But again, I'm in a position of ignorance, and most of it is due to timing, because I just learned about this. It may have been yesterday. It may have even been this morning. Yesterday, I think it was. So anyway, the issue that I wanted to talk to is the systemic issues. If there are representations made, I think that it's imperative that the district follow through with those with proper communication, that there is a true collaborative spirit. And I am here today to speak, and I don't want myself or anybody that's here speaking today to be misunderstood. We want a collaborative relationship. We enjoy a collaborative relationship. Together we can do great things. I can tell you myself, Margaret, and many of us in the SPED community have spent countless hours. We're not paid, please. It's volunteer, to assist the district in trying to develop programs and work collaboratively together. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is
I'll take his last 20 seconds.
Margaret
Thank you, Eric.
Koschak,
That-
time's
that's me.
not remitted, but you have 3 minutes. Thank
Okay, thank you. I'm not going to take the full 3 minutes. I mean, Eric pretty much said everything I wanted to say.
3 minutes.
The only concern I wanted to add is just, again, Norwalk's a big town, but it's a small town. And people talk, and there's scuttlebutt, and concerns were that not only were the parents kind of kept in the dark, but that the teachers at NEC were as well. And so my concerns were, given that the NEC parents, who have been very organized and very vocal and very specific about issues, were not advised of this candidate, nor were the teachers, how is this candidate going to have a good idea of what she's walking into? So, as Eric said, a collaborative relationship goes both ways. We'd love to sit down with you, Dr. Adamowski and Yvette, and talk about this some more. But we just, again, it's not about the candidate. She sounds great. It's about the process, which we'd like to improve. Thank you.
Thanks, Margaret. Next up is Amy Hodgins.
Demonstration of Wirecast.
Please state your address for the record.
I'm
And you have
Amy
3 minutes.
Hodgins, 4 Balfour Road. I'm here with our co-president and co-founder of the NECC PTO, Jillian Hedges, and Fawn, who is our secretary. So I am Amy Hodgins. I am representing the NECC PTO. I am co-founder and co-president of the NECC PTO. I'm a member of the Special Education Ad Hoc Committee and a member of the PAC-E Committee. I'm here to address 2 issues. The first question is, how did we get here? I'm standing here tonight because of 2 simple words that mean so much. The words are communication and collaboration. These words are continually missing from so many poignant conversations, discussions, actions that stem out of this district. I am not here to fight the system. I am here to collaborate with the system. I am here asking for open, effective, and useful communication. If the NECC community, including parents and staff, had had the opportunity to meet Ms. Whiteman 3 weeks ago, before this board meeting agenda was released, we wouldn't be standing here today. The NECC PTO has been asking to be involved in the hiring process in terms of meeting final candidates so that we feel that we are part of the decisions that directly affect our children on a daily basis. The who's, what's, when's, and how of the past are not important to me. It's the who's, what's, when's, and how's of the present and future that are important. Many inefficiencies of Norwalk Public Schools policies and procedures have been discussed these past few days, yet nobody has stood up and said, yes, there's a problem, and yes, let's collaborate and communicate and work through these issues and come up with solutions to benefit all parties. When I have repeatedly suggested and asked to have a school governance council at NECC, I have been told the same answer. NECC is a program, not a school. The answer I should have received was NECC is not required to have an SGC. It's a principal program. But let's form a similar committee consisting of staff and community members, and let's work together.
Demonstration of
Again,
Wirecast.
2 simple words go a long way: communication and collaboration. How can we teach our children the meaning of these words when adults who directly affect the education and the future of these children cannot lead by example? So where do we go from here? I ask that the HR department please send letters to all internal applicants, regardless of the position they applied for, to thank them for being Norwalk Public School employees, to thank them for applying for the position, and explain to them why they were not selected to be final candidates.
30 seconds, please.
Form a committee at NECC comprised of staff and community members, and let our voices be heard. Let us be part of our own community, and let us act as resources to one another, to inspire each other, and to take Norwalk Public Schools to a whole nother level. We can do this together with 2 simple words: communication and collaboration.
Thank you, Amy. Thank you. Last on the list is Steve Colarossi.
Thank you, Mr. Mead.
This is a demonstration
For the record, my name's
Wirecast.
Steve Colarossi. I live at 27 Plymouth Avenue. My son Anthony is a student at NECC, and for the past year and a half, he thought he was a student and that his school was NECC. Tonight, I need to tell him he's not, and it's not. Because if we're not a real school, then how can we have real students? And at first, when I thought, gee, it's kind of a silly distinction because the board's own policy, which is 1110.1, talks about the importance of community and parent involvement, not just in schools, but in the district-wide. And this hiring decision is clearly one that affects families, So therefore, under policy 1110.1, the board should have enforced the requirement that parents be involved in the decision. It's unequivocal in our policies. Now, the whole question of are we a real school or not? If we were a real school and our buses carrying special needs children were late most every day,
Is a demonstration.
I'm sure central office would have done something and would have fixed the issue, because we're not a real school, so that issue hasn't been fixed. If we were a real school, I'm sure that when the 3-year-old program was cut down from 5 days to 4, parents would have received more than a week's notice, but we're not a real school, so we didn't get the courtesy of more than a week's notice. And when that same change caused many children's IEPs to be out of compliance because our children were assured of 5 days of services and not 4, I'm sure that at a real school, the administration would have reached out to parents and told them, the program change is causing your child's IEP to be out of compliance, but it wasn't. So we had to fight individually, demanding PPTs and threatening due process, to then sit in a meeting and essentially be gaslighted and told that the IEPs didn't promise 5 days when it clearly did.
This is
We're a real
of Wirecast.
program. Whether we're a real school or not is irrelevant. We have real kids, they have real issues, we have real families, and we have a real PTO that was organized not by ex-politicians and gadflies, but by truly concerned, earnest people, and you met them right before me. These are the folks who deserve to be involved in hiring
30 seconds,
decisions,
please.
just as we would anywhere else. Thank you very much.
That concludes the sign-up list for public comments. Are there any other members of the public who wish to speak? Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, we will now move on to the superintendent's report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I've got 2 things to report on tonight. And the first is a financial issue, but thankfully does not include further discussion of our budget, which is now settled. In the focus on our local funding for the past several months, I think the information regarding the new ECS formula was overlooked, and there has not been a lot of information forthcoming from the state on this as well. But I'm going to give you a sheet that was pasted together from page 12 of these endless printouts from the latest report of the Connecticut School Finance Project. Let me start by saying that
Of Wirecast.
you'll recall last summer and fall that there was a piece of legislation called Senate Bill Number 1, submitted by Senator Duff. And that bill essentially created a new ECS distribution formula for the state of Connecticut. And there were some significant improvements in the formula over the previous formula. The previous formula, for example, had a 90-to-10 ratio of wealth to income. The new formula was changed to 70-to-30, which helped us in terms of the 30%. Also, there was a weight added for ELL students, which was helpful to us as well. It actually was a very good formula if fully funded. But the state government did not have the tax resources to do that. And so that gave way to SB 1. You've probably seen it in print, the status quo version, okay? So we're now dealing with the status quo formula, which means that the state had the same amount of money, but redistributed it differently based upon the new criteria. Redistributed it, thank you, differently based upon the new criteria. And then they went through a grandfathering process with the districts that would have lost all their funding under the new formula. So what you see before you, just to illustrate this, is like page 12 of the printouts from the school finance project. This is the sheet that begins with the N districts. And you'll see Norwalk highlighted there, and you'll see our 2018 amount of ECS, the formula is $11,050,993. What we should get if the formula were fully funded is $15,826,545. So we are at a level of $4,775,500 underfunding, or 30% underfunding. This list is representative of all the lists you'll see in this printout, in this runoff, but you'll see that there are a number of districts that are overfunded, right? So if you look at districts like North Branford, North Canaan, Oxford, Prospect, South Windsor, and Stonington, you'll see a positive number there where, for example, Stonington is at 419% of its of the amount of money it should receive. These are largely the districts that would lose all their funds under the redistribution formula, but were grandfathered. My understanding is it's the intention of the legislature to do this gradually over time, taking incrementally away from those districts that no longer qualify for funding and distributing it to those districts that do. However, the primary factor here will be simply putting more money into the formula. And you'll see the number of underfunded districts. We are one of the largest in the 30% range, but there are districts that are even greater, at Stanford at 51%, for example. So I think as we move forward with this into the subsequent years, the advocacy with our legislators is no longer to change the formula, because the CJEF case was rejected by the Supreme Court, so that issue is over. It's to fully fund the existing formula, which could be favorable to us if it were fully funded. This also highlights the fact that even at a $4 million increase, if that were ever to be achieved down the road, that's basically 1 year's budget increase for us, right? So this is going to fall largely on our local municipality, as it has in the past, and the ability to prioritize education services in order to move our per pupil expenditure on an equity basis closer to that of surrounding communities. But I just wanted to clarify this issue with you and explain it. This is the new formula. It's better than the old, and if it were fully funded, it would be much better than the old for our students. Dr. Kimmel.
The old formula was applied not only to education directly, but to transportation, adult education. It had an impact on our reimbursement rates for new and construction and renovation. Assuming the formula was tweaked somewhat in our favor, will all of those issues be changing? And when you add up,
I don't believe so.
Say that again?
I don't believe so.
Not yet.
I don't believe so. I think I know, for example, we're at the same level of reimbursement for new construction than we were. Perhaps those will be aligned. There is another factor at work here, which I'll report to you on at some point in the future, and that is the move from the district reference groups, which are now 10 years old, to what the state is now calling the decile reference groups. And it's a grouping of all the districts in the state into 10 deciles of districts of comparable worth. The thinking at the state level is that those reimbursements, such as construction, will probably be aligned to those as opposed to the ECS formula.
I see. Thank you.
As they were in the past to the district reference groups.
Mm-hmm.
This is a demonstration.
Second item, I wanted to give you a brief update on our IB program and plans for the future. So I think the board is well aware that last year, Brian McMahon became approved as an International Baccalaureate IB diplomate program. And I'm very pleased to report that the number of students currently taking one or more IB course is 150. And you may recall that we had an estimate last year of 100 to 120 who might take one or more courses during the first year. Now, again, this was an unknown to students, and so, while there was some familiarity with this with some families, for many students, it was an unknown. So we've exceeded that goal at approximately 150. Now, the number of students enrolled in the 13-credit IB diplomate program, these are the students that take all the 13 credits for the diplomate program, is currently 28 in 17-18. And this is what Mr. Hurwitz, the principal, refers to as the intrepid explorers, right? Because this was brand new territory. For 18-19, they currently have another 47 additional registered that will join in the next year for a total of 75, because this program is open to juniors and seniors only. Again, 13 credits for the diplomate, and it's a complete program of IB courses. And so we'll have 75 next year. That looks like it will put us on track to reach the goal of 90 in 2019-20. And the goal of 90 represents approximately 5% of the student body, which is kind of the national and international standard for the diplomate program. So we made very, very good progress, and my congratulations to the staff at Brian McMahon High School, who have really done a wonderful job implementing this and providing this opportunity to students. Now, I wanted to just have you recall that when we set our priority implementation steps for 17-18, one of them, number 26, said that we would conduct a feasibility study and develop a plan to initiate the International Baccalaureate K-12 pathway. And the question there was, do we work down with the middle years program, which is in IB, the IB world, it's grades 6 through 10, or do we start with the early years program, which is grades K through 5, or the equivalent of K through 5, and then connect in the middle. Suzanne Suzanne Brown Korschetz has been working on this with me as her retirement project, and has done great work. We're now very close to having a phase 1 feasibility report. It will conclude that we should, and this is after consultation with the IB in Hague and officials and so on, that we should start with the early years program, which would conform to the tentative building decision that was made for the renovation of the current Columbus School as an early years program. We are currently working on the timeline of tasks that have to be accomplished over the next 3 years in order to do that, and it is a daunting task. It's a 3-year rigorous process. We would need next year to assign a .5 coordinator to initiate the process. And this person, 3 years later, would become the full-time IB program coordinator in the new school. During this period of time, we would need to select a designate principal or principal designate next year, so that person would be in place the 2 years prior. They can be a principal in another school, but we have to know who they are, because they have to hire a staff by the end of next year who will be maybe teaching somewhere else, but they'll be designated for the school, and they'll be taking 2 years of training. in order to meet the IB criteria. And so the following 2 years then are devoted to training of teachers to be certified to teach the early years program pedagogy, and the IB application process and curriculum development. This is not the Common Core. This is an international curriculum, and every IB school is required to develop its own curriculum around the international IB standards. So we are going to be at a point in the next couple of weeks where we are going to need to have a board workshop on this topic, because there's a lot involved. There are a lot of personnel implications. There are a lot of things that you need to know about so that you can interpret what we're doing if we are in fact moving in this direction. So you have your May workshop devoted primarily to middle school redesign, and then you're meeting with the SGC co-chairs in June. So I'm going to suggest that we either take a half day or a segment of your summer retreat for this, or make it the first workshop session in September. But it's a very important topic, and there is a large number of things that are going to flow from this workshop in terms of moving forward that have to be accomplished. Having said that, I think the experience at Brian McMahon has given us the capacity and some of the people who would be capable of getting this off the ground and involving others, training others, developing others in this direction. This would be a choice for parents as a magnet school, but it also would be a choice for teachers who want to move in this direction, just as it was with Brian McMahon. So that's the best of both worlds. So that's my report. And again, I just want to get this back. This has been off the radar screen for a while. I want to get this back on your radar screen, and hopefully we can address it as soon as possible over the next couple of months. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome. Does anyone have any questions about the IB program? Mr. Kimmel.
Not exactly the IB program. We just had a committee meeting about 18. We were discussing the professional development required for that. You just discussed the professional development required for the IB program. I remember, and I'll remember it for a long time, it was so interesting, the discussion on the Montessori program and the professional development required for that, and how complex this is. I know professional development often comes with price tags. Do we have it as anywhere in someone's drawer or a file, all of the professional development and possibly the costs for the next few years? Because
we don't have it.
It may be overwhelming, and we're biting off a lot more than we could possibly handle.
So, this kind of gets to the heart of, what's the talent strategy here, right? You can develop your own staff, or you can try to bring in people from outside who have had an experience in, for example, an IB school or something of that nature. We have a very stable staff. We have a relatively low rate of retirement, and we have an experienced staff. So under our circumstances, a good deal of this falls to training or retraining of existing staff. To give you an example, the IB training at Brian McMahon for a relatively small group of people for 11th and 12th grade was approximately $200,000. And that was over a 2-year period of time. So you have fees that you have to pay, registrations. Some of it is online. Some of it you have to go to meetings in different parts of the country with them. There is something called this. It's a type of introductory conference that everybody has to attend. And that's only held a couple times per year, but it's in different parts of the country or the world, right? So we've got 200,000 there, and we know that we have been spending about 200,000 per year during the summer in terms of professional development for curriculum. What we haven't calculated, which we should, is the cost of the professional development days during the year, and then some of the other professional development we do in terms of leadership development programs, and we also have a program for para-educators to become teachers through the Relay Graduate School of Education. So that would be a good study. I can ask Tom and Kristen to take a look at that and see if we can come up with a total amount. But it is it's relatively high, and it's growing higher. And many people would probably feel that it's not high enough given all that we're trying to accomplish, and given the fact that we're trying to accomplish it primarily with our existing staff.
Thank you.
Anybody else? So give us a couple weeks on that, and we'll get it back to you.
Demonstration
I
of
will say,
Wirecast.
Bruce, I mean, it is worth going to the International Baccalaureate website, which I think is ibo.org, and you can see how structured it is. And I think at the end of the day, you know, we know PD is very valuable. We had not given it enough weight back in the day. That's been changing. But I think in the case of IB, that PD is very, very specific. I mean, PD is maybe a misnomer because it really is like very specified
This is a
training.
demonstration of
That
Wirecast.
you can't perform in the IB, you know, without that. That's my 2 cents. Brian?
Could I just say, sorry, this is anecdotal, but a friend in Annapolis has their child they have an IB like full 12 years now, and you can't buy a house in the neighborhood. You just can't buy them. People are flocking to the area. This is a great
But it's the
opportunity
same thing
for
in
us.
Greenwich. the
You know,
one school that's IB.
along those lines, I wanted to mention to you that Suzanne has identified 5 early years programs in Connecticut. One of them is the closest to us is the Rogers School in Stamford. We have almost 100 students of Norwalk residents who are attending the Rogers Magnet School in Stamford, who I'm sure would rather be educated in our own community had we such an opportunity here.
Great. Well, it's going to be a win-win for us, I'm sure, as we proceed with this. Our next item on the agenda are actions. We'll start with the consent calendar, which is the approval of personnel, approval of budget transfers. Could I have a motion to approve, to put this on consent?
So moved.
Mr. Lyons, a second. Mr. Kimmel, any discussion? Mr. Meek?
Sorry, just quick. I'm happy to support Deborah Whitman. My colleagues know, I'm not conflicted here. My twins are actually graduating in June, and Ms. Whitman will start in July, so there's no conflict of interest for me here, but I'm looking forward to having her help build NECC into the gem it is and can be even more. Thanks.
Thank you, Brian. If there's no further discussion, could I have a vote?
All in favor?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay. 8. So all in favor, unanimous vote. Thank you. The next action is approval of the 2018 Summer Academy criteria for grades 4 and 5. I know we've had a discussion that. I don't know. Is Janine, do you want to talk about it, Janine? Or you think we're up to speed enough on this? Does anyone have any questions on this? Heidi?
Janine, I want to just, yeah, if I could just ask a question. I'm pretty clear on this, but I just want to make sure. I know that we're expanding it, obviously, from K to 5th grade now, but year 15, 16, we had K through 3rd grade, correct? And then 16, 17, we had K to 4.
Correct.
And now 18, 19, we'll have K all the way through 5th grade.
Correct.
I think this is so well needed, and I'm glad we have the study, we have the criteria, we'll have all of our students that actually need the support there and able to take advantage of it. So I'm happy that we're able to hopefully tonight move this forward.
Thank you.
Okay, anybody else? Bruce?
Just a reminder, I know Mr. Meek has been drowning in his work the last couple of months. Just a reminder, I think it would be good if we could get the costs of the different scenarios, so we could require more students at higher cuts to go to summer school. Because the requirement of 21 percentile That's too low. That means that someone with a 25 percentile is not required to go to summer school. We can't do that. That child will reach middle school and then high school, and they won't be prepared. So among the many other things that have price tags attached to them, I think this one is extremely important, because the bottom line is when a kid graduates, and we are graduating the students, but are they ready for a profession or for college? And sliding through with the 25 percentile, it's going to be pretty tough on them, when they graduate high school. So we should see what we can find out, what the costs are at least. But we can't.
I'm sure we can. I think Janine can explain to us, if you want a little more, that, the summer school program is funded by our priority school district PSD money. And obviously that's finite. We got cut by 20% last year. That was over $600,000. We're assuming we're going to get cut another 20% this year, which I think is like $460,000. So, we're either going to have to find, if we really want to take that threshold up, we're not going to be able to finance summer school just on priority school money, I would assume, correct? And that will need to go, if we went to 35% or whatever the threshold would be, it would have to come from the operating budget, which, as you know.
Right.
Or grants.
Yeah, and there is a small summer school grant as well, and Title I funds are also eligible for summer school. But the point is, your point is well taken. We're going, by the time we hit the 6th grade, we're going to be running out of money. Now, what has been extremely helpful and has made this possible is the budget decisions you've made to take the questionable items out of Alliance and Priority School District, like the security guards, like the percent of the teacher's salaries, the things that we've been working on the last 3 years. That's given us the capacity. And it looks like we'll have the capacity to go up to about the 6th grade. At that point, we're going to need additional help if we want to complete up through 8th grade.
It would be good to have that information before we go into our retreat in August.
Okay.
We may adopt some new goals. That's the point.
Okay, well, thank you, Bruce. Anybody else?
So professional development and cost of summer school, if we raise the
Thresholds.
Yeah.
I think it's probably a good item for a June Finance Committee
This
agenda.
is a demonstration of Wirecast.
Don't you want to go on vacation?
It's early June.
Okay, so I think we are ready for a motion to approve. Ms. Meyer-Mitchell, second. Ms. Corbett, all in favor? Unanimous, 8-0, for the new criteria for grades 4 and 5.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, ma'am. Oh, sorry, Sarah.
did we miss an item of the budget transfer item?
That was in consent. That was lumped together with the personnel votes.
Got it.
So now we will go to the approval of a revised calendar for 18-19, the school year agenda. Could I have a motion? Mr. Meek?
I would like to make a motion to table this item for a future agenda. We need to settle our budget before we discuss this item further.
Okay, well, why don't we, anyone want to second that motion?
Me.
Ms. Meyer-Mitchell, and then we can have discussion?
No, you can't.
No.
No?
Motion to table.
Motion to table is not debatable.
That's it, non-debatable. Okay, well, I guess then we're going to debate. All in favor of tabling the calendar adjustments? Thank you. That's unanimous. I'll just explain for the audience and for the record that the calendar changes that were proposed were for the 18-19 school year were to have school start on a Monday instead of Wednesday, so we'd have 2 more days of school. That would provide 182 days of instruction. We just need to, this is for 18-19, we just need to know our budget situation. We've just gotten last week what the actual figure is going to be in terms of revenue from the city, and we now need to figure out how we're going to allocate all that. And so I think it's, as you can see by this board, just precautionary to review how we're going to be spending our money and where we're not going to be spending our money before we approve this calendar.
Just to add to that, Tom has been working very hard on this in terms of representing our current situation as agreed to with the city and the implications of that for the next year, and then, trying to build in some defensive posture for the following year. We've had a couple of meetings on this, and we're going to look at this for a final time at our staff meeting on Thursday. And then we'll have something for the Finance Committee, at least that represents our recommendations. Obviously, it creates a much brighter picture for next year, where you're going to be able to achieve all, if not all of your budget goals. The reductions are comparatively small compared to where we started. However, there is concern around the following year and what we would leave to get done that year, based upon the projection that we would be with contractual increases and medical. Without that medical reserve, we would be at about 4%, just with the required items. Anyway, we'll finish that up and get it to the Finance Committee, and they will apply their wisdom to it, and hopefully you would be in a position at your May meeting to finalize reconcile your budget.
Okay. We'll now move on to information and reports. The first topic will be the Cabe audit and state mandated policies.
I'll start.
Will you start, Heidi?
Yeah, I'll start. Good evening, everyone. This is a huge undertaking for the policy committee. We knew we need to do something as far as our policies are concerned in our book, our binder of policies. Something like this hasn't really happened since the mid-'80s, if I'm not mistaken, Frank, maybe 86 or 87. What we decided to do as a committee and working closely with Frank was have an audit on our policies. We decided to use Cabe. They did do an audit for us, and they looked at this intensely and spent a lot of time on this, and there are 18 policies that we really needed to delve in and work on that are mandated by the state. What we did during our last couple of our policy committees, but especially our last committee, we looked to pass through to the policy committee and then tonight to the full board for discussion 9 policies that we had discussed in detail. Also, as a policy committee, we went back and forth, and all of the members added information, any changes, additions, and thoughts on what we wanted to do with these 9 policies, as well as some suggestions. We also, at some point, we looked at different buckets. Frank and I worked on having what really needed to be done, what could wait a little bit, and what was really intensive and what we really needed to delve in on. A couple, and then I'm going to have Frank take it over from here, but we looked at food service personnel, homeless student policy, non-discrimination, migrant students, comparability of service, pesticide application, internet safety policy, fingerprinting and criminal justice information services, and sexual abuse prevention. I also am going to add, with all of the committee members, we knew we had talent in central office. We had a lot of key players as far as some of these policies are concerned that we wanted to get their input on. For example, we had pesticide application. We had Ken from Parks and Rec. Internet, Ralph, is Ralph here tonight? Ralph is here. You were the person that we knew that we wanted you to look at this policy and add any changes and revisions as well. Fingerprinting, criminal justice, Joe Rios, as well as Anthony Shannon, I know spent a good amount of time looking at this as well as their sexual abuse. We also recently passed, we won't want to forget about Title IX, which we spent a lot of time on, our Title IX policy, so that kind of went hand in hand with sexual abuse prevention as well. So we have a lot of work ahead of us, but at least we delved in and we spoke about these 9 policies, and then we'll need to additionally add those other 9 policies in that we'll be discussing during our May meeting. Frank?
Yep. Thank you, Heidi. Good evening, Board. Just to build on that, Heidi is correct. The Cabe audit was completed with a set of recommendations. We opted for one of the recommendations, which including 18 state mandated policies that currently don't exist in our manual, and that is our first priority as a policy committee. We have those 18. The committee has gone through 9 of those 18. Many of those 9 were redlined and are before you tonight for discussion. In addition to those 18 state mandated policies, Cabe has recommended that we modify 69 existing policies in the manual to conform to the most up-to-date statutes. And then in phase 3 of this policy audit process, there will be 35 policy suggestions that we may choose to implement, but that will not come until some point next year. Our objective as a policy committee through the end of this year is to discuss and approve through the full board as many of the 18 missing state mandated policies as possible. And then to spend the bulk of next year looking at those 69 recommended revised policies that we have that are existing but need significant changes. That would be our primary objective during the 18-19 school year as a policy committee. In addition to the policy committee members who spent a lot of time looking at these policies and making suggestions, we also had, as Heidi said, several of our chiefs and other directors in the central office who are experts in these particular areas weigh in and redline as necessary. As the process so happens, once we make our redline version, we share it with you, full board, in discussion. Once we've gotten through this point, we will then package these policies and send them off to Cabe, where they will make the adjustments, input them into the network at the Cabe office, send them back to us in time for you to approve these as new policies at our May business meeting.
And also, once these, if I could just interject, Frank, once these are approved, also they'll be online. So if we go on our Norwalk Public School website and look under policies, once these are approved, we have action on them, they'll be readily available for the public to look at.
That's right.
As well.
Okay, well, thank you.
And one
Thank
other
you.
thing, if I can just add one more thing on. Just kidding, raise my hand. One thing that we're passionate about, I am, as well as the policy committee, we will be delving into vaping. There's a huge issue that we're finding, starting in our middle schools and our high schools, so we are looking to have a small, comprehensive, standalone policy on vaping that the policy committee will be taking up.
Thank you,
And
Heidi.
that's it. Thank you, Mike.
Okay, I think that Frank or the superintendent, where there is a proposed calendar for 1920. We're trying to put calendars out 2 years in advance to help all of our families and stakeholders and employees plan their lives and childcare and holidays and the like. And so there is no longer a required regional calendar, as there once was, one of the brainiac ideas, that came from Hartford. And so I think, Frank, it's relatively self-evident what you've proposed to us, but please discuss in any detail.
Yeah, not a whole lot different from the 18-19 revised calendar, starting the school year a couple of days earlier. So what you're looking at in 1920, it would be a proposal to begin the school year on Tuesday, August 27th. We had talked to the superintendent about that Monday being a PD in 1920. However, we could start the school year on Monday, the 26th, which is what we are planning in the 18-19 school year. Districts that in our area that already have the 1920 calendar out and approved include Greenwich, Westport, and Stamford. This early start time conforms most closely to the Westport Public School District, where they are starting earlier in August, understanding the importance of getting those instructional days in before the SPAC testing in April. The only other change noteworthy here is to continue to follow the 18-19 April vacation week off, which would start on the 13th, actually Good Friday, the 10th, as opposed to the week of the 6th. So going 1 week later in April for the vacation.
And the reason for that, Frank, is because of SBAC testing, or?
Well, that's part of the reason. SBAC testing is over, Craig, after the first week of April, first full week? Second?
This is a demonstration of Wirecast.
Okay, so I think going 1 week further into April just gives us another full week of instruction. Expands the instructional window.
there is a lot of oh, sorry, Sarah.
That's okay.
Go ahead.
Does it overlap with any of the surrounding districts, Maple Break, Westport, or Wilton?
That's a good question. I would have to check on that.
I would say, I mean, I don't know, there are a lot of, parents amongst us here on this board.
This is a demonstration
I know a lot of my
Wirecast.
peers, aren't in love with the April break, that it's kind of like winter's over and why have it? And would rather have the break in February to kind of get away, from snow days, cold and so forth. I guess because of the SBAC testing, we maybe wouldn't want to, go on those lines. But I don't know. I know for a lot of people that April break is.
I was actually going to suggest that the February break is important also for health, to have more days that we're out of school. It allows, we had a terrible flu season this year with multiple viruses going through, and it was very hard to break the cycle. So a long extended break in February would really help us with that.
I'll defer to Craig on this question, but I remember in year one here, 15, 16, that we had talked about the optimal months of instruction and learning, that essentially you get most of your learning in 5 months. And I don't remember, starts in October?
I believe it's October, November, December, January, and February, those five.
That's my recollection.
90% of learning in those 5 months, or 85%, close to 90% in those months.
I guess the data that would be interesting to me is absenteeism due to illness. When we removed the Columbus Day and Veterans Day 3-day weekends, which gave us another break in the germs and the longer February break, did we have an uptick in student absenteeism due to illness? Because my experience has been that there's been a lot of absenteeism this year because we simply couldn't break the cycle of germs.
Just a couple comments on that. Most of the districts in our area, my understanding is in the state, have phased out their February break to a long weekend. The Midwestern schedule would be to have a March break, right? Which has the advantage of becoming a trimester break as well, right? So it's kind of an even split. So that's a consideration. The placement of the April break is also a consideration, right? I don't think there's anything in stone that would, require it to be 1 week or another. What we would caution you on, though, is the number of instructional days before state testing. And so we can't go back to the days of having 2 week-long breaks, as our students don't get enough instruction to be able to compete with their peers that are all moving to have more days of instruction before state testing.
I will say, Stephen, that one of the reasons why I think the states, these other school districts in Connecticut went to that model is under the regionalized calendar, they did away with the week off in February, moved to just an April week long, and then had just a long weekend in February. But Darien and Canaan, not that they're our neighbors, but by no means do we have to copy them, they did take their free days, their floating days in the regional calendar, and they did have off the full February and the full April. I just feel like we should have a discussion about this, because I know parents come to me a lot. I don't know about, with our union partners, I know a lot of them live in other towns, so the regional calendar helped them because they were off at the same time as their kids. But then, as I said, New Canaan and Darien started playing with the calendar, and so everyone wasn't on a consistent calendar. Sarah?
I would just say to that, the more overlap that we can have, I think, with our towns, that we have activities that people do in different towns, sports teams, whatever. We have a lot of interconnection between the towns around us.
And I think the point about our employees is an important one, because many of them have children and are conflicted when, we have different times off, and that is also a factor in absenteeism. So, we're certainly worth a healthy discussion.
But I would say, Sarah, on that, having been on the board of CES and having dealt with the nightmare of the regional calendar, that was as close as you were going to have, being on the same pattern as our towns. And obviously now that's blown up. So I think us trying to, mesh with some other towns, everyone's got a different calendar now, so you're not going to be able to mesh. It'll be, or that much harder. Julie, sorry.
I do, reiterate Sarah's point, though. I do think it is something to at least look at and find out a little bit if there is the possibility of overlap, that may be useful, at least with our immediate surrounding towns. I just looking at March, just a comment, it's, on here, we have no planned days off, 22 days of instruction, and yet this year we had 5 snow days in March. So, that's also something to consider. We lost a full week of school. I just, one note on the beginning school day, and we can go back to the holiday week if others want to. But on the beginning of the school year, I think there is something to be said about, especially if next year we're proposing to start on a Monday as well, which we're currently tabling until we find out more information on the budget. I think there is something to be said about having that first day in August rather than ending that day a day later in June.
Oh, absolutely.
So if there's a possibility of that, I would, as much as possible, encourage that we start earlier in August than adding that to the tail end in June. We know how.
No, absolutely, and that's our recommendation, is to, if we are going to have an additional day, to do it at the front end.
And I would say, Julie, I really concur with you that to have a full week, because September is such a tough month. You start school, then you've got Labor Day, and then depending on the year, you've got, this year it's not so bad in 19, but in 18, you have both, you have 3 weeks where you only have a 4-day school week.
Absolutely.
And I think that's really hard, especially in our elementary schools with our ABCD days. It just throws everything off.
Absolutely.
And so I do think we should have for first full week to be 5 days. Makes a lot of sense. Any other comments? Okay, well, I think, look at this calendar, take it home with you, talk to some of your peers, fellow parents, teachers, and get some feedback so that we can try to cultivate. Many years ago, before I was even on the Board of Ed, under Superintendent Marks, she actually had a calendar committee because people couldn't understand the calendar and why it was what it was. And it was really interesting to look at, because several people, myself included, I didn't want school to start till after Labor Day, but if you look at the calendar, it's just not feasible. You can't do it with the way the holidays fit, and Christmas and everything else. So I think, it is worth having a discussion with, either SGCs, PTOs, connections, so that we can really come up with optimal, as good a calendar as we can. It will never be perfect the next time we review this. So thank you, everyone, for this long discussion. And now we will move to the March financial report from our CFO, Tom Hamilton.
Okay, you have the March financial report. We are 75% of the way through the fiscal year, 70% through the school year. We've spent about 66% of the budget, so we are on track to live within our budget. A couple of highlights. In the past, we've talked about substitutes, so just to update you through March in the substitute account, we have spent, there's actually 3 substitute accounts. We've spent $1,360,000 year to date. That's compared to same time last year of $1,702,000. So we're down by about $342,000 year to date on substitute expense, or about 20% lower. So I think that's good news to present there. Just going through some of the details on this, there is a stipend account in here. It's account 139, which is new for us in that we have moved all of our stipends out of the regular wage account into the 139 account. And so you'll see that we're presently reflecting an over expenditure there, but we will be transferring money from various regular wage accounts, particularly the teacher's wage account, to cover the overage in the stipends. The stipends are not running higher than previous. We just, previously they were really buried in the regular wage account, and in order to have a more transparent and fuller understanding of all the stipends, where they are, how much they are, how people obtain those stipend positions, and make sure they're posted through the talent office and so forth. We've moved that expense out starting this year and going forward into next year's budget. Fringe benefits, we're showing 75% of the contribution for health insurance expenses have now been made to the insurance fund for this year. That is higher than the amount from last year, but that's really just a timing issue because we are 75% of the way through the fiscal year. I am noticing that there are some accounts within facilities that are running a little higher than budget, and we will be likely needing to transfer some funds between now and the end of the year into those accounts, but we believe we have sufficient free balances in other accounts to cover those areas. In particular, we think we've got some extra money, it looks like, in the electricity account because we rebid the electricity early in the year and achieved some savings in our kilowatt cost for electricity, so we'll cover those facility shortfalls with savings elsewhere within facilities. And finally, in the special ed accounts, the 3 or 4 major accounts that we look at there are the 330 account for other professional and technical services. That's where all of the expenses for various consultants or contractors who are used by the special education department to provide services to students are paid from. There you'll see we've expended year-to-date about $4.2 million compared to a same time last year of just under $4.7 million, so we're down about 10% on those accounts. On the 562 and 563 accounts, which are out-of-district tuition accounts, you'll see that we are down pretty substantially in the 562 account. Year-to-date expenditure of $749,000 compared to $1,475,000 at the same point last year, so we're down very substantially in that account. And then the major out-of-district tuition account, the 563 account, we're at a spend rate now of $5.6 million. Last year we were at $6.6 million. We're down about 15% in that account. We are expecting those accounts overall to essentially run at budget, but in terms of a trend line, I think those are all positive trends and reflect the efforts the district has made to bring more services in-house over the course of the last 2 years. So I think that's completes my report. If there's any questions, happy to answer them.
So, hey, Tom, with the health costs being at 75% of budget, like, what kind of risk is there at not landing on 100? Like, could we go over at year end? I'm trying to understand, because I know we just get an every 3 months charge from Fred Gilden of roughly $6 million. Like, are we going to get hit with more than $6 million in the last quarter? Or?
No. He has set the charge based on the amount that we've budgeted, and so we're going to get hit essentially exactly what we budgeted is, and it's really our, ultimately that flows through us, and if for some reason we needed to contribute less this year, which we had to do 2 years ago, that would be, our decision to do that. But we've indicated we're making the full budgeted contribution to health benefits this year, so that's what will be taken from that account, goes into the insurance fund, and then the insurance premiums, as well as any self-insured expenses for dental and any other run-out expenses associated with the prior medical plan are all charged against that insurance fund.
Thanks, so.
Okay, any other questions, board members? No? Okay, if not, thank you, Tom. We will move on to committee and representative reports. I guess we'll start with Ms. Corbett.
Thanks. So just quickly, I'll let the folks that are the committee chairs of both the committees I'm on report on those committees. But I will say on the, for the board member announcement piece, it was useful and helpful to have a number of AT teachers as well as principal and several parents attend the last curriculum meeting that we just had 2 hours ago to really discuss implementation issues and questions that were still relevant for the AT redesign. And so it's been useful meeting staff to discuss both policy issues as well as now curriculum and instruction issues. I just wanted to say I've been thoroughly impressed by the dedication of staff members as well as parents that are coming out to speak about issues intelligently, still have questions and hesitations, but have been very productive in those conversations. So.
Thank you. Sarah?
I agree, that was a really great, robust curriculum meeting. And we have a meeting of the SPED Ad Hoc Committee on Thursday, and we are going to talk more about AT redesign and also meet the new director of NECC. And that's all I got.
Okay.
Nobody ate the pizza that I brought except me.
We'll get it on the way home.
We got a microwave. I just got an email a little while ago with the new contract with the food service workers. So we should be able to put that on our next upcoming agenda, and that completes all of our contract negotiations this round.
Awesome. Okay. I guess go ahead, Brian, I'll go at the end.
Finance will meet on May 10th to reconcile our budget, being the primary item. I'll have a few other things on the agenda, but that'll be the main focus. That's it.
Mike, do you want to go?
Ms. Keys? No, I figured I'd go down. I'll do
We'll
it
go
at the end.
around. I think we covered policy. Our next policy meeting will be Tuesday, May 1st, where we will look at those other 9 mandated policies, as well as looking at vaping.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Kimmel?
Well, what Julie pointed out, something I think was very important, curriculum instruction is a committee where the people who are, I think you need to hear from the people who are going to implement the curriculum and see things from their perspective, and I really enjoyed having them there. It was about 5 or 6 teachers, some parents that were interested, and we had some of the folks who were with us when we had our workshop. We discussed what I call the cube in the Renzulli model. We're not done discussing it. We focus primarily on the enrichment clusters. They're fascinating. We haven't finished discussing the cube and those clusters and some of the other things, the ability groups. We plan to continue next month. I hope the same group of teachers can be there. One of the issues we want to discuss next month is the timeline for implementation. There's some issues that arose relevant to what will happen the end of this school year and next year for the current second graders. And we'd like to talk about the actual, what I was calling the flow of the day, how this will have an impact on daily classroom life once it's implemented in full, to make sure whatever glitches there are, we can discover them as early as possible. So when we begin full implementation, it's as smooth as can be, and everybody is prepared for what's coming down the line. Almost everybody at I think everybody at the meeting was positive. This is fascinating, what we're doing regarding AT. It's just another one of those things that is a little bit, you could say it's long overdue. You get set in your ways, but a lot of what we're doing makes so much sense, for everybody in every school. And that's the amazing thing about it, that it took so long to figure this out. Anyway, it was an interesting meeting, and board members who are, I'm glad Mike Barbas, he was there for most of the meeting. If board members are interested in this issue, please attend. You're always welcome, and you'll participate just like anybody else on the committee. Thank you.
Barbara?
I want to congratulate Craig Kreller on a successful, don't look so surprised, on a successful STEM fair. Thank you for including me as a judge. I learned a lot from our students and our teachers. I think these kinds of events are exactly what Norwalk should be doing in a rigorous and thorough way. And I greatly appreciate the efforts made in that direction.
Okay. I have 2 topics. One is, the budget. It was a 4+ month long process. Next year, I'm keeping track of all the meetings, how many hours I spend on it, because it's going to be scary. But we did come to an agreement with the city, and I think everyone felt, walked away from the table pretty happy. So I think that was a relief for everybody. On the Facilities Committee, we'll have a meeting next Monday. Things are moving along on many different fronts. We're finalizing a list of what we're going to do at Norwalk High School this summer, and then we're going to file an EDO 49 with the state for the state reimbursable projects, which will then be done the subsequent summer. We continue to make progress on both the PONUS and Ely projects. We did get funding from the city we got actually everything. We are only asking for design money, but we got everything for the subsequent projects, which are the Jefferson renovation is new, and the renovation of new of the school we're calling IB at Chestnut. And we are working on acquiring 2 properties for the Columbus at Ely School, which will allow us to do more with the property. There is as everything in Norwalk, nothing is a layup or easy, but I think we're making progress there, and we expect that to continue. I think the nenext thing you'll probably hear on from the Planning Committee is we're getting cost estimates on those first 2 projects, and it looks like the numbers might be coming in a little higher than the most current, the number for the dollars that were approved. But actually, if you look at what was originally proposed for those projects, it's kind of coming right on. So we should have stuck to those original numbers, but more on that later. And board member announcements. Start with Barbara. Anything? Heidi?
Yes, actually, Barbara and I went to the Media Pathways presentation at Norwalk High School. That was about a week ago, 2 weeks ago. Fantastic program. I mean, they just launched it last year, so there's still some more work that needs to be done, but we've got some amazing teachers. Ralph was there as well, thank you. We've got a great program at Norwalk High School. We have a lot of programs at our 2 high schools, and a lot to be proud of with all of our teachers working really hard with our students. And our students did a fabulous job as far as their presentation and their films.
I would add that program made me extremely jealous.
Yeah.
There's a lot of times in Norwalk Public Schools that I'm jealous that I can't go back and do what these kids are doing. So we're doing some things very right.
Thank you. And in addition to that, I recently went to a reading at Ben Franklin and just did a reading for some of the kids at the school there, and they're just so appreciative when any board member, anybody comes to do a reading, and that was part of NAEYC. So that was actually fun to do that. In addition to that, many of us have gone to many of the plays, but there's new ones coming out from Norwalk High School and Brian McMahon, and all of us will go, and any of our new members urge you to go. The Addams Family at Norwalk High School, and then Hairspray, I believe, at Brian McMahon. And Norwalk High School is coming up this month, I believe the end of the month, as well as Brian McMahon. And we've talked about it for years, especially many of us that have been on the board for a while. It is like going to a Broadway show, and our kids work incredibly hard, and our teachers and our staff, and just the enthusiasm you have when we go to these plays. I love going to Broadway, but I go here all the time. It's just great to support our students, and I highly encourage everybody to go if you can.
Thanks, Heidi. Brian?
Thank you.
So the Addams Family is
was just
April
looking. April
27th,
20,
28th, 4th and
Dates?
5th
Yep.
with 2 p.m. Saturday matinees.
Got it, going? Bring the
I'm,
kids?
I'm very
The twins?
intrigued. No, we'll bring Rachel, that's all.
All right, good. Sit in front.
Okay, any board member announcements on this end? No? Okay.
Mr. Chairman, if I could just mention, you have, coming up in May, would be at your business meeting, would be the approval of the high school program of study, which we have also been holding to see how the budget played out and the funds that we would have available, whether or not we can meet the budget goal or would have to do it in 2 segments. So what we are doing currently, the high schools are enrolling students in the 11th and 12th grade. And these are students that are covered under the previous 20 credit requirement. So they will be able to register now and choose their courses for next year. We are holding the registration of 9th and 10th grade until the program of study is approved, because those would be different courses. It would be the 26 credits, and it would require you to approve the program of study beforehand. So if you hear things about this, not everyone is happy about holding 9th and 10th grade. But it's necessary this year to do it that way.
Should we not have could we not have approved it tonight?
No, because you have a budget reconciled.
Good point.
Take care of that little thing first.
That covered.
Okay, so I think we are ready to conclude tonight's meeting. Could I have a motion?
The minutes.
Oh, right, sorry. I'm so much.
Some of us
in a
are
hurry
already
to go. Such a hurry to go.
Get a sunglasses. See out of here.
Okay, so the minutes of March 20th meeting, any corrections? Move to approve. Mr. Lyons, second. Mr. Kimmel, any corrections?
I don't remember which minutes. There was one typo that affected the meaning of
Demonstration
something.
of Wirecast.
It was flushing rather than fleshing, and it changed the meaning of the sentence, so I don't know.
Flushing out instead of fleshing out, something like that.
So I don't know. I think that was the second set of minutes, but all I can see. I'm sorry, I don't mean to hold us up. It doesn't really matter, probably.
I don't think spelling.
Okay, well, we can.
Take a look, see if you
when
see
you
a
find it,
flushing.
we can alert Marilyn.
Change it to fleshing.
Right, you see flushing.
Okay, so a motion to approve.
I already
with-
moved.
Mayor?
It's
Oh, sorry. All in
okay.
favor?
This is a
Unanimous,
demonstration
thank you
of
very much.
Wirecast.
And the meeting minutes of April 3rd.
Move to approve.
Mr. Lyons, second. Ms. Keys, any corrections? It doesn't look like there are. All in favor?
Abstain.
So 7-0 with an abstention from Mr. Meek. Yes, Mr. Shannon?
Introduce.
Okay. Oh, is this to introduce our latest hire? That it would be a pleasure, I think, for us all to actually meet and know the name, the face. So if you'd like to come stand down to the podium, we'd love to welcome you to Norwalk Public Schools.
Thank you. Thank you.
So I think we're all really thrilled, Deborah Whitman, that you are joining us and will be our administrator who will be running the Norwalk Early Childhood Center at Allen Road.
Thank you very much, and I really look forward to the challenge. I'm very happy and excited with the process. So.
Terrific.
All right, good.
Well, we can't wait till July 1. Right?
Yeah.
July 1. Okay, well, thanks, everybody. And
Thank you.
you're welcome. Okay.
Move to adjourn.
Second, all in favor? We're done.
Look at that, 8:30.
8:30. Wonderful.